Hello, this is Marcus Robinson, aka Mark Rob. And on behalf of Kellen Conley, Hyphen Nation, and the Hyphen podcast group, thank you for listening to this episode. Before we get started, please be advised we will be discussing the child molestation accusations levied against the late Michael Jackson. While the conversations tend to have levity, there will be serious discussion of the molestation accusations in great detail. If you have difficulty listening to topics that include sexual assault, potential sexual assault, and molestation of a child, or are triggered by anything of that nature, please be aware that this episode may not be for you. We thank you for your time and listening. Welcome to Hyphen Nation.
So let's just get right to it. I'm here with Marcus Show and Mad Love Robinson. I'm Kellen Conley. This is world's greatest podcast, Barack Obama approved, Hyphen Nation. And we're going to get into something heavy. And I don't know how many laughs we'll provide this episode, but we're here to talk about Michael Jackson and the documentary that just came out, Leaving Neverland, and we're going to do what me and Marcus do. We're going to dive deep and talk about some things. So Marcus, how are you doing tonight, bro?
I'm doing okay, man. I'm doing okay. Whenever the news broke out, even before the documentary premiered, I definitely knew that this is something I was definitely going to watch and I wanted to chop it up with you about because I think we can say unequivocally, other than this might not even be hyperbole, but other than maybe like Jesus Christ, Michael Jackson may be the most famous person in the history of the world. So, I mean, this is something that, is going to be something that has ramifications not only throughout the music industry, but, just pop culture in general.
Right.
So yeah, I knew that whenever the documentary came out, and it would basically drudge up a lot of accusations and information about Mike that we weren't definitely not going to be prepared to hear. But it's important that we know the truth and know all sides of the story and hear different people's perspectives, especially people who they say that they are victims of sexual assault and sexual abuse. But I definitely want to chop it up with you, Kellen, because I know that you're definitely smart, definitely sensitive to these issues. And, we definitely wanted to create a space of conversation where we can, review the documentary and then also, try to come up with some answers in this crazy world that we live in.
Right. Yeah, because the funny thing was, I guess it was last month, January or maybe. The funny thing was that I had mentioned to you, I was like, oh, it's going to be 10 years since Michael Jackson passed in July, or June. So let's get together and talk about everything. And you had said you may want to wait on this documentary. And I was like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because I'd heard about it, but I was like, yeah, let's see what this documentary brings, and then we'll see where we're going. And here we are, man. So, as always, Marcus has graciously provided the questions and the topics that we're going to be going through this episode. I do want to ask you one thing before we get into it, though. You said you took notes as you watched this?
Yeah, I took notes, which I literally have never done in my entire life watching anything, because there were things that I was fascinated by and there were things that I was questioning. So, I mean, like I said, we're going to have a conversation, about the documentary itself, about the subjects, not only Michael Jackson, but the gentleman that levied the accusations, Wade Robinson. Wade Robson, and
I thought it was Robeson.
Yeah.
Until part 2, and then they're like Robson. I'm like, Robson? Oh, okay.
Yeah, him and James Safechuck, call him Jimmy. His nickname is Jimmy.
Yeah.
And so, there are things about the documentary that, definitely eye-opening, but there are things that, that I wanted to question and wanted to think about a little bit more. So if the listener, I'm assuming you have heard or have at least seen it or heard about it, but HBO premiered a documentary called Leaving Neverland. It was created by British filmmaker Dan Reed, and it's a 2-part series. It's about 2 hours per part, so 4 hours in total. Basically following the lives of Wade and Jimmy from their childhood all the way up until present day, and not to get too bogged down in the details initially, but we basically follow their journey of what their early life was. And, these are young boys who, their life is forever changed, because they, encounter Michael Jackson. And, they fall into the lifestyle of being, on tour with them and performing shows, having hours upon hours of phone calls. And it even sounds very weird saying out loud, but sleepovers with Michael Jackson.
Right. And,
we hear about abuse stories about how, I believe Wade stated he was abused from the age of 7 to 14. And right. Jimmy's the same situation where he was abused and molested through, his early childhood to his adolescence. So we follow their journey, and we also see how, because they're, Michael Jackson is part of their life, we see how even their families are basically rocked to the core and in some ways even destroyed because, Michael Jackson, according to them, he is a bit of a manipulator and a groomer, and he basically, they accuse him of pitting them against their parents, and yeah, man, it's a lot of sad details. Part two, we go from their childhood to adulthood, and where we see Michael on trial in the early 2000s, whenever he had his big other molestation case, and how that got tossed. And by the end of the documentary, we follow, after Michael's death, we see how, these years of trauma sort of catch up to Jimmy and Wade, and how, they first admit to their families that, they've been abused. And yeah, we sort of just kind of end it there. Man. So like I said, I wanted to get with Kellen, just to, hear his thoughts on the documentary itself, and also sort of digest like where, as society, I mean, not even American society, but the world, like Michael Jackson's literally a world-renowned artist. How the world actually is going to move forward from this. Now, once the documentary, came out this last weekend, news publications and media, like, this has basically been a topic of discussion for a lot of different people for a lot of number of days. I've seen like I've seen like radio stations have begun to, ban Michael's music from playing. People joke that we're living in the cancel culture. Like, if you do something, like, you'll just get canceled and forgotten about. And so that's one of the later questions I want to ask you about, because I think that we're sort of in an interesting space where this man literally sold, hundreds of millions of records. Like, he was I don't think you can become more iconic than Michael Jackson. Like, the
No,
80s.
there's no way.
Yeah, like, there's, like, if someone, he really defined, like, what it meant to be a pop star. And I think every person after him, in some way, shape, or form, they always chase that. And so the conversation is always like, how can X compare to Michael? Like, the conversation now is like, before this documentary came out, the conversation was, is Beyonce a better performer than Michael? And, I mean, that's, even if you don't agree that Beyonce, can compare, like, just for the fact that, she is up there, that just shows, not only her great career, but just the long staying power that Michael had over our basically collective subconscious of what it means to be, like, someone who's in the pop sphere and has, like, star quality.
Mm-hmm.
So the conversation that I wanted to have with you is, we're going to, before we delve into the actual documentary itself, I wanted to actually talk to you about the 1993 accusation. I remember when I was a kid, like, I still remember where I was when, like, the simulcast happened. So basically, for people who don't know me or forgot, like, in 1993, that was actually the very first time Michael was accused of sexual abuse from a child. And he had a telecast that simulcast through different cable television channels. And if I remember correctly, it was like in the afternoon sometime. I was living in DC at the time. I was at daycare, and I was, playing with my friends, but we had a TV in, like, one of the rooms. And all of a sudden, whatever we were watching was interrupted by, this red background and this, very, very pale-skinned Michael Jackson talking a lot of stuff that I wasn't even, not even really aware of what was really going on. Like, at this time, I was only, about 6, 7 years old. And so, I'm not young, so I don't really understand the full magnitude of actually what's going on. And to be honest, like, I'm not sure a lot of other countries even realize it either. Do you remember where you were in 93 when that happened? Or was that, like, even a thing where you were when that happened?
So you said you saw it during the day. I didn't see it as it happened because I'm thinking I was in school. So I didn't see it the moment it came across the TV. I saw it on, they start when the news picked it up. So my mom would always watch, she would watch Channel 4 because we got the DC news channel. So we'd always watch NBC and we would watch the 5 o'clock news or whatever. And I believe that they played the full video message on there. And I saw that and I was like, I'm pretty sure I was with my mom. I was like, Michael Jackson, what happened, Mom? And she's like, he's being accused of doing inappropriate things with kids essentially your age and stuff like that. And I was like, that's crazy. Michael Jackson never would do that. Like, Michael Jackson's the greatest, Like, I don't know what I said exactly.
Yeah.
Because it was such a small blip. Because I remember seeing the video as a child, and then I kind of remember the statement as a child, and then I remember it kind of fading from public eye eventually. Like, they were talking about on the news a lot, but like I said, we were only watching the local news. We weren't watching like the major country news, the national news. We weren't watching that or anything. So we weren't getting constantly bombarded by the news cycle Michael Jackson. It was just kind of here and there. And then it went away. And then next thing I know, next time I even recall Michael coming back into the public eye was 95 when he was releasing his History album. So it was a very small blip for me. And I was just kind of like, oh, there's no way he did that. And I can't remember what my parents' response to it was. But I think I may have read a little bit of the story from, like, my mom used to have a People magazine subscription. So I think I read a little bit about it in there. Like, but it didn't have any impact on me that made me say Michael Jackson definitely did this or Michael Jackson could have done that. I was just too young, you know. It was all about for me, Bad was my first exposure to Michael Jackson. So that's what I remembered because I was 4 at the time Bad came out. And so that was and then Dangerous came out in 91. So my experiences with Michael Jackson was that he's a larger than life star, like you said. And there was just no way these accusations could be true. So that's where I was at.
Yeah. So in 93, Jordan Chandler, then he was 13 years old. He made the accusation. And yeah, I mean, the funny thing is you talk about, coming off the Dangerous album, like this is a man who, I was born in 86. So I don't have like the experience of 80s Michael per se, but I definitely remember 90s, him just always being this larger than life figure.
Oh, the rollout for Dangerous was huge, man. Like it was everywhere. Like it was like evening, like prime time video releases and everything. So there was no way you were missing anything he was doing around that time.
Yeah, I mean, the Black or White video. I remember.
Yes.
I remember, I was at my cousin's house, and like that simulcast on cable TV too. Like Michael Jackson was literally an artist who could command, that sort of attention and then not be that big of a deal. Like, Remember the Time video, like, Jam,
yeah, I was getting ready to say, Remember the Time was a huge thing. Like I watched, I remember getting to stay up late and watch that when they released, and it was like, it wasn't just like a 4-minute video. I mean, the original video was like 8 or 9 minutes, I feel like, because it was a whole mini movie.
Yeah, definitely. Moonwalker, like literally, I'm sure I'm not going to be doing this joke anymore, but I used to always say like my favorite musicals ever was Purple Rain, Streets is Watching, and Moonwalker.
I believe you said that on this show before.
I have. Like, I mean, I absolutely love Moonwalker. Bad is literally like, I mean, my top 10 favorite albums ever. Like, I love Bad. And so, being that young, seeing what Michael is, like, someone wrote that, like, we treat our 80s pop stars like they were demigods. And I mean, that's true. Like, he really was of that nature. And so when the 93 accusations hit, that basically, that was really sort of a very, being that young and seeing that, not knowing anything really, anything like in depth or whatever, that was very strange. Like, it was very, very strange to actually go through. And so he eventually settled for over $15 million, right, which I'm not even sure even people even were, very aware of that. In the documentary, they say, like, the reporters say that it could have been between 15 to 25 million, but I mean, no one really knew then. I guess it's public knowledge now, whatever. And so we're coming off this 93 accusation and settlement, and then we're in this sort of gray period of where Michael is basically at the butt of jokes now. And so, even the Chappelle made jokes on his Showtime stand-up special. Comedians and movies, like, it was Martin, like, it was no big deal to sort of, make fun of Michael now because, he's basically this sort of weird character. And so even though, he's sort of, I guess, I don't want to say shunned, because, I mean, we would definitely still listen to his music at the cookouts and the barbecues, and every, Halloween we were still bumping Thriller. But there's still a period where he just sort of, not necessarily in the public's conscious. And that's sort of after History, the History album, basically after History, but in the between History and like the early 2000s. But then, we get to the 2005, and then we have another accusation and another trial. And so now let's sort of incorporate a little bit more about the now this is where it's going to get a little bit, sort of dicey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in 2005, Michael had another trial, and one of the witnesses that called Michael to the stand, that got called to the stand in Michael's defense, was Wade Robeson.
Yeah.
And so he got cross-examined by, the prosecution, and, according to them, like, he was extremely convincing, and he testified that Michael never molested him, and Michael never had like sexual contact with him. And Macaulay Culkin was another individual who was called in the trial, and he also testified that Mike did not molest him or sexually abuse him. And as a result, 2005, like he got acquitted, and it wasn't like a settlement out of court thing. Like, he literally just got acquitted. And so with that victory in the public's eye, now it's sort of like, okay, there may be one time we thought like, they're trying to bring a black man down, but this acquittal, this stamps it that, this is he didn't really do it. And maybe these people really were after money all this time.
Yeah.
And so when 2005 comes now and has the acquittal, now it's more acceptable that Mike is actually in the public eye. And so even though we do have sort of like, the tabloids and the wacko jacko stuff, like, it's okay that he's like more of a public figure now. Like, he's at the BET Awards now. And,
yeah,
he's
that was a big deal.
I
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's something that's like openly celebrated more now. But then, we come to his passing. And now this is sort of where it kind of gets tricky as well, because Wade, there's a lot of, there's a lot of news about Wade and how he was during this time period of where, even though, when he was a child and a teenager, he was getting molested by Michael, he still wanted to be, a part of Michael's tribute when he died.
Yeah.
And he was like specifically requesting to be a part of tributes. Like, he was specifically requesting to go to the funeral to make arrangements. And, this is a guy on the surface, he's saying that, he wants to be in Michael's life and celebrate Michael's life. But then I believe, according to the documentary, maybe about a year and a half, 2 years later, that's when Wade actually made the accusations that he was molested by Michael. So, and also during this time period, the other accuser, James, he, according to the documentary, he stated that he was asked about, I believe I'm remembering right, he said he was asked to testify for Michael, but he just
he refused.
He decided he didn't want to.
Right.
So,
he got threatened apparently, and by Michael and by Michael's attorneys and stuff, and he still stood firm. He's like, I'm not going to do it, and so he did not testify in the 2005 trial.
Yeah. So now that's sort of where we come to. So basically, we're at a point where after Michael's passing, not while he was alive, but after his passing, the gentleman felt compelled to, come speak, about what occurred. And from what I gather, in summation, these were men who, when they were boys, especially more for Jimmy, they claim that they, loved Michael. And you know, it's sort of gradual from, yeah, you like Michael Jackson, who he is as the icon, but, you know, maybe you take that as far as like you actually love him. And when he's giving this attention, you're falling, you're falling for him in that sort of way. And they kind of intimated that that's the reason why they never said anything when they were as a kid, and they didn't, and maybe they didn't even think it was wrong, like their sexual relationship.
Right.
And so, because they had the love for Michael, and, Michael claimed that they loved them back, like that's why they felt compelled not to say anything. But whenever he passed and whenever they started having children, they couldn't mask, well, particularly for Jimmy, like he couldn't mask his depression anymore. And
Right.
I think Michael's death triggered something in Jimmy to where, he was just sort of wildly depressed, but he didn't really know how to exercise like what he was actually dealing with. And so that now we're basically, at the present, and, the two gentlemen, they participated in a documentary, and there was another special that Oprah did. I didn't watch that special, but, apparently
I didn't either.
apparently they get more into, the why of everything, a bit more further with Oprah. So yeah, so
a couple things.
Yeah.
So, and when he got acquitted in 2005, I was living in Morgantown. I had two roommates at the time, my friend Steve and my friend Wes, and it was like early afternoon. It was during the week sometime, and they're like, oh, they're going to announce the verdict today, the Michael Jackson trial and everything. And so I had turned on the TV. So I was like, I want to, because at this point in my mind, I'm like, I mean, he had actually went to trial. There was no settlement. So I really, even though I didn't feel any kind of way, I was too young and dumb to make a decision on whether or not I thought he was a abuser at this point. So I just wanted to see what happened to Michael Jackson in his trial. So he turned it on, and I remember it took him like 45 minutes or an hour to leave his house to get to the court. And they had called his lawyer, said, the verdict's in, come, like, because he wasn't locked up. He was at, I think it was at Neverland or wherever his other house was in LA. I forget what it was called. But we literally sat there and had CNN on, and we were just waiting for Michael Jackson to get into this vehicle so that he could go get this verdict read. And finally he came out and he went in and he was not guilty. And I was like, I kind of felt a vindication at that time, because I was like, oh, he's not guilty. Like, that's awesome. Like, again, young and dumb, and I don't know how, I wasn't too familiar with the way the court system works and all this. And I mean, I had an idea. I was in my 20s, but at the same time, it was like, he's acquitted. That means he didn't do it. Like that was just, there was black and white for me. There was no gray area. And I remember me being happy for him and everything. And I don't remember it being a big race thing at the time, but I do remember, like in the house at least, but I do remember us being happy that he had gotten off. And looking back, it was just a really weird set of events that unfolded that day, even when it was just come to him getting his verdict read at the trial. I just, that stuck out to me when I was thinking about what we were going to talk about tonight. I just wanted to share that. So, yeah.
I mean, no, I mean, shit. I mean, other than the OJ verdict, I mean, that's like the shit. That's probably the biggest American verdict that we've been alive for, honestly. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, shit. I mean, yeah, man. I don't even remember where I was, but I mean, no, you're right. I mean, it was definitely a situation where it's like, we had the jokes, like we had the tabloids or whatever. Yeah, he may be, kooky, maybe he did really bleach his skin or whatever. But, once he got the actual acquittal, then it's like, okay, like it really was like, the person that tried to scam them, like maybe the first person scammed them, but the second one they couldn't get the shit off, and so
Right.
so yeah, I mean, and that's what I said, like, and maybe we were not even just you and me, but I mean maybe just society in general. Maybe we just wanted that vindication because we couldn't believe someone could really be that dastardly.
Ugh.
Like this is someone who this nigga made Thriller. Like why would we want him to be a terrible human being?
Right. And he made Thriller in his early 20s. Like I had that revelation like not too long ago because I know Thriller came out in 1982, but then you break it down, like 93, they're saying he was 34. So, I mean, that was 11 years earlier. So, I mean, he was literally like 23, 22 when him and Quincy sat down to make Thriller. And I was like, man, I can't believe Michael Jackson made Thriller at that young of an age. That's incredible. Like, I just had that thought like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, I wonder what this documentary is going to come out and say. So, yeah, he made Thriller.
Yeah, man. And so I don't remember that trial, but the wild thing is I remember exactly where I was when he died. I was in a bus station. I was on my way to Chicago, Illinois. I rode a Greyhound from fucking, oh my God, I was living a savage life. I was telling you. I rode the Greyhound from whenever you remember when Morgantown used to actually have the Greyhound?
Yes.
I rode the Greyhound from Morgantown to fucking Chicago. And I was in a layover station. I believe it was still in Pittsburgh. And the news broke. And I remember people CNN, they reported that like, oh yeah, he's in a coma. We don't know if he's really, dead yet. But then whenever TMZ broke the news, that's when people know like, yeah, he really is dead. And the crazy shit is like, that's when TMZ actually came credible in their reporting because before then, like it would really just like, well, I mean, it still is, but it was just like people thought it was just gossip bullshit. But whenever TMZ broke his death, that's when people were like, okay, TMZ actually has sources and like TMZ actually, which is really sad to say what our media kind of is, but TMZ really was a reputable source in reporting, at least celebrity information, at least.
Right. So why were you going to Chicago?
I mean,
living the life,
making moves, man. At that time, yeah, I was, man. At that time. Do you remember where you were when you passed?
Do I? So I was working at the shoe department in the Morgantown Mall, and I want to say for some reason maybe the third person was on lunch at that time, but it was just me and my store manager at the time, and I walked over to the kids section, and across from the kids section, like literally across the mall hallway, there was the eye center that was in there. And on the eye center, it had a TV and it said that Michael Jackson was in a coma. And I was like, why is Michael Jackson in a coma? So I immediately run and get on my phone, call Angel. I'm like, yo, what's happening with Michael Jackson? And this is 2009, mind you. And she's like, I'm not seeing, because she was sitting at home. She's like, I'm not seeing anything. I'm seeing that he's in a coma and this, that, and the third. And I was like, what happened? They're like, they don't know anything. They said that he collapsed or something, and they're that he's in a coma, and they're trying to they're getting him to the hospital or whatever like that. And then I want to say the only time in my life I can actually say this, Fox News came across with the news that he was dead, and I was like, and she's like, Fox News says he's dead. I'm like, it's Fox News. They're lying. And she was like, I don't know. It seems pretty credible. And then I think I was able to get on Twitter and then start seeing things being confirmed that he had passed away. And literally, no pun intended, that shit rocked my world. I was fucked up for at least 2 weeks over that shit. And I didn't even expect it. It was like out of nowhere. I literally, Angel actually ended up taking a trip to Atlanta, for like some kind of conference that she went down to, another teacher friend of hers. And so I was literally in my house when I wasn't at work, watching MTV play Michael Jackson videos all day. And I watched the tribute, the Memorial Live at the Staples Center, and I watched Kobe and Stevie Wonder and Brooke Shields and all of them come through and talk about them. And I was literally messed up so bad. I called my dad. I was like, he's like, hey, how you doing? So I'm good. I said, I'm not good. I was like, I'm sad. He's like, why are you sad? I was like, because Michael Jackson's gone. And he was like, son, that's kind of part of life. Like, I mean, he gave us what he gave us while he was here, and it was his time to go, you know? And I was like, yeah, but I mean, it's Michael Jackson. Like, this is huge. And I was just literally messed up for weeks. And then even after that, it was constant rotation of Off the Wall all the way up to History. Like, that's all I was playing for at least a month after. And then like I got the let's see, Elliot Wilson put out his MJ playlist and stuff, so I got all that stuff. And then 50 put out that MJ mixtape or whatever. I think it was 50. Maybe I'm thinking wrong. I know DJ Jazzy Jeff did a mix, but then I think 50 did like Forever King or something. That was kind of, I don't think, it wasn't Michael Jackson theme, but it was something to do with Michael. I feel like maybe I'm just mixing the two together because they came out, that both happened around the same time. And then the tribute starts happening. Like Dwelle is singing Human Nature and creating the beat and everything on YouTube, which I thought was super cool. And then The Game put out that trash Michael Jackson dedication track, and it was just a wild time, man. And for I was holding on to that feeling forever. I was like, I'm gonna always celebrate Michael's music. Like, it's crazy that I got so far away from this incredible catalog of music, and then eventually, like I'd say about a year or so after his passing, like it just kind of stopped, or it just kind of went back into the catacombs, so to speak, of my music and stuff. I wasn't playing as much, and then I just kind of slowly got away from him, I guess. I mean, I was like, I'd always think about like when June rolled around or August when his birthday rolled around. I was like, oh, it's his birthday. Oh, this is the day he died. I remember where he's at. And I was always kind of like, oh, I remember what I went through and what it meant to me at the time. But I for some reason, I started to just drift away. And then I had actually, I think I even said on the pod that I wanted to get back into paying more attention to Michael Jackson's music again, because I went so Prince heavy, especially after his death, because I started listening when he started kind of putting out music again in like 13, 14, like with he put out like 2 albums before he died, and then he had the one that came out right after, the Hit and Run Phase 2, and then there's Hit and Run Phase 1. He had that band that he had, and then he had put out another solo album. I was really into those solo albums and Hit and Run leading up to his death. And then when Prince died, then I kind of dove into his music more, and it wasn't such a mourning process for Prince. Unfortunately, I wish I could say I had more and more for Prince, but I didn't. It was more like a 3-day thing where I was just kind of upset about Prince because it was so sudden. But I had mentioned I wanted to get back to Michael's music, and I even did a recent episode, and when I say recent, like within the last 2 years, of Victory Jump Off Radio, where I did a Michael Jackson episode again. And I just never went back to having that same connection that I had when he died. And then for this to kind of come out, well, not kind of come out, for this documentary to come out and present the facts that it did, it's just still mind-numbing to me. Like, I'm going to let you go on because I'm kind of rambling here. But I have a story I'll share in a little bit about something I said to my coworker today about it. But I'll let you go on because I've been talking for like 45 minutes, it feels like, on that one thing.
No, tell the story. Like, what happened with your coworker?
Oh, it was just a coworker I've been working with for almost 7 years at this point. And I know she's a huge Michael Jackson fan. And she actually was in my branch today, so I came up to her, and I was like, "Hey, did you watch the Michael Jackson documentary?" And she's like, "No, my boyfriend was watching whatever." And I said, and I decided not to watch it with him. Whatever. I was reading everything. And I said honestly, I was like, it I told her, man, I was like, you like, she's level headed too. So she's not someone she's not somebody on Twitter who's like Michael's innocent, and she's, or on Reddit, Michael's innocent. She's not that kind of person. She's a very rational person. So she understands the magnitude of what the documentary brings. And I was like, you know what? Don't watch the documentary. Like, I'm not trying to ruin, because she's older than me. I was like, I'm not trying. I mean, you already know the things that he's done and the things that this documentary is going to say, or what's out there. I was like, honestly, for you to love his music much as you do, I feel like you're not going to do yourself any favors watching this documentary, because I certainly didn't do myself any favors. Like, I knew going in it was going to be bad, but I went up to her. I was just like, yeah, don't watch it. Like, just keep the music where it's at, and then don't watch the documentary, and try to enjoy what you can from the music. Because I just couldn't ruin it for her, man. It was like telling Aaliyah that Santa Claus is fake, because I don't know if she's awake for some reason, but she's not. You know, I just didn't want to ruin that idea for her, even though she clearly isn't stupid. But I just couldn't do it, man. I went like, you need to watch it, and you need to stop listening to music immediately. I can't do it. It's either you watch it and you don't believe it, or you watch it and then you're like, it changes everything. And I'm definitely on the changes everything side.
I mean, the thing is, I mean, it doesn't have, so, I mean, she's going to have to watch it and make her own mind up whether she believes it or not.
Right.
And the guy that I said earlier that I read, Craig Jenkins, he wrote something for Vulture. And one of the things he actually wrote was he watched a documentary about 2 weeks ago, and he said like he like was like, you know, walking on the street and he heard some people playing Michael Jackson, and he was in a way envious of them because they didn't have like that cloud over them.
Right.
And I mean, that's actually why I wanted to get into cancel culture with Michael a little later, because I mean, the world is going to make the decision of whether they believe these two men or not. And so we can get a little bit into that right now, because I mean, like I said, like I mean, you know, you made your mind up, and, you know, I made my mind up about a lot of things and still even wondering about things. But
yeah, there's no way you can make final decisions off one viewing. Like, yeah. And God, I can't imagine watching part one again, but I'm going to have to at some point, because I'm going to say it now. Like, another one of my coworkers said, "Is the documentary well made?" I was like, it's a damn good documentary. And while it is, people were saying it's one-sided. It's like, these are these two men's stories, these two former boys' stories. It's their tale. It's not the tale to be like, oh, well, they're going to say this, and then we're going to say, but these 6 people said that Michael never did that. Like, it wasn't built to be a point counterpoint thing. It was built to be their tale of essentially living with Michael Jackson and having Michael Jackson be a part of their lives. So that's one of the questions I want to get into, is if you felt it was a good documentary, because I mean, I'm not gonna lie, man. I am on the fence of whether thinking it's actually a good documentary or not, because I do think that, I mean, I think it is one-sided, because, I mean, the third subject is dead, and there's no representation. There's no representation of the Jackson family in the you know, the whole documentary at all. But I don't necessarily think that that's what makes it a good or a bad documentary. I think that there's a lot of the quality of the documentary that I sort of question, and that's why I was sort of taking notes, because I do think that there is some things that are kind of questionable, not only about the documentary, but the 2 people accusing, you know, Michael Jackson of the thing. Now, the question
I want to actually preface also that like I do think there is a difference between asking whether you believe Jimmy's and Wade's story versus if you believe Michael is a molester. And so I wanted to get into that, but let's stick on basically just the documentary itself. Now, I do think that they did a good job of actually tracking these men's lives and chronicling everything about, from their, kids, the photos and like the TV clippings, and that stuff was actually really put together.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there was anything that the documentary was lacking for you?
God, I wish it was lacking more, to be completely honest with you. I found it funny that I don't know if you read this, but Wade Robson's dad committed suicide. So he wasn't there. I mean, he physically isn't here to be a part of the documentary. I found it strange that they didn't include Jimmy's dad at all. James Safechucks. I thought for sure, I mean, that they would have the father kind of come in and say something, and it really didn't have that. And the fact that there wasn't, aside from Wade's brother, and of course the men themselves, there wasn't really any kind of male influence as far as the stories that went on and stuff. I did find that kind of interesting that it lacked the male perspective a little bit, now that I think about it. But that's the only really glaring thing that pops up in my head. So I want to hear what you have to say.
I mean, I think as far as that perspective, I mean, you had the two men, but you also had you had Wade's brother. But the thing is that I think that is a problem with the documentary, because I mean, if you want to really get we are going to get real about this shit, but I think a very sad thing about this whole thing is that if you think about it, other than Michael, being, the accused, molester, their mothers really let these boys down, because this is part of the actual quality of the documentary I want to get into, but especially Jimmy's mother, like, I had a supremely big problem with this woman, because
oh my God,
it felt like she didn't take any of this seriously. There was points where she was like laughing while talking about like life with Michael, and it didn't feel like she really processed anything that happened. And so you have this woman who it feels like there's a lot of points where she's talking like an envy, like she was very proud to be a part of these moments, but she didn't have any sort of actual, contemplation on, this man who gave me these, trips and, hotel
bought us
stays.
the house.
Yeah. Yes. He bought them a house. They gave him the fake loan and said, oh yeah, you don't have to pay it back anymore after you didn't testify against us. After all of this, my son was still potentially, fucked by Michael Jackson. She didn't have any sort of remorse. And Wade's mother, she also came off like they were just like they were star hungry. And so in summation, basically, for Wade, he was a kid who, whenever he was very young, he idolized Michael Jackson. He learned the dance moves. He dressed like Michael during
the damn near looked like him as a kid.
Yeah, so he in Australia, where he's from, he was getting on TV shows, doing competitions, and then he happened to catch the eye of one of Mike's managers, and ended up being on tour with him. But in summation, basically their family, the mother decides that they want to move to America to make Wade a star,
Oh
but by
man,
moving, but
I
by moving
didn't. That was
to
crazy.
but by moving to America, their father was left behind. This caused Great Depression with the father, and then years later, when the son, um, they basically imply that Wade and his father have no relationship at all. Um, and then eventually, the depression of the father weighs so heavily on him that he decides to commit suicide. And if you want to be real about it, like Michael, they paint Michael as someone who was a manipulator, but at the same time, like Wade's mother was chasing fame. Like
Hmm.
that is a very big part of, Wade's life that they don't really address. Like we can definitely, Mike is, to blame if these things are true. Mike is a lot to blame. We're not going to victim blame here. But at the same time, like Wade's mother made the choice. Jimmy's mother made the choice that we're going to keep Michael in our lives. And even though, he's doing these things that may be peculiar, we're still going to have him a part of our son's life. And we're going to basically attach ourselves to him. And so I think a part of the filmmaking that was bad is that they don't really address it. Like there's no real contemplation of, why do you think your mother was really doing these things? Do you blame your mother for these things? And again, like I'm not going to victim blame any person who was sexually assaulted, whether it's a man or a woman or a child or whatever. But they don't really take a lot of time. The filmmaker at least, they don't take time to actually contemplate like the role that the parents had in their child's degradation. And so I think that part of that filmmaking is kind of bad.
Yeah, I wasn't even considering the mothers because I figured we were going to get into a different part. But you're absolutely right that's. I absolutely hated how Stephanie Safechuck sounded that whole the whole film. Honestly, I mean, she got a little upset here and there, but I mean, she for the most part she was just like, I'm in front of a camera and I'm telling this wonderful story about Michael Jackson, and it just so happens to have a sad ending about what he did to my son. So, and then the other one, Joy, I mean, she, like you said, she's the one that took off to America. And literally like the thing that blew my mind with her, because when you said it, I was like, oh God, yeah. Like she literally, I think they hadn't heard from Michael for a little bit at this point. And she's just like, Wade's going to miss his chance. We're moving to America. And, and then nobody like, I don't like, how do you move from Australia to Los Angeles just on I mean, obviously they had a relationship with Michael Jackson. So it's like, okay, that's a pretty big hook to come to Los Angeles. But you just uprooted most of your family to go chase this dream of your little boy being a famous dancer. And you left your husband and your other son with no problem. Like, it's just asinine and crazy to me as she would do something like that.
Yeah, man. Like and also, going back, like, you know, these were parents who had no qualms with leaving this, even though he's this super famous person, they had no problem leaving their child alone with them. Like
I
leaving
know.
the child alone with almost a complete stranger. And by even them, like, taking them on tour with Michael, like they encourage it, and I mean, in a lot of ways, like they even like, I think in a lot of ways, like they were even happy with it. I mean, I'm not saying they were happy with their, son being potentially molested, but they they were fine with like the exposure that their kid was getting. And in particular, I know like, especially for Wade and how he was a kid that he definitely idolized Michael. You can tell, you know, they were, their family was for it. And so it's really hard to sort of watch that too, and how, like I said, like their parents don't, the mothers, like they don't really take any any sort of stock in that. So that part of filmmaking, like I said, was kind of questionable, and also a part of actually not telling more things, particularly about Wade, that was very questionable also. So, during this time period, they definitely talk about how Wade perjured himself. Well, I don't know if it's really perjuring himself, but at the same time, like, they talk about how Wade lied on the stand, during the 2005 trial, but then, he eventually, made the accusations. But, I mean, there's things that Wade has done in his past that are pretty questionable that, Twitter and, Michael defenders are really staunch in sort of promoting them. So,
yes, they are.
So we're going to look into a little bit into that. But the main, like I said before, there's really two questions that you want to ask yourself. And so the first question is, do you believe Jimmy and Wade's story? And then the second question of that, like, which is just a byproduct, is, do you believe Michael Jackson's a child molester? So I want to ask you, Kellen, do you believe Jimmy and Wade's story? And I mean, this is something I've been wrestling with since, watching the documentary. And I mean, in all honesty, it will be something that I know I'll never answer. Like, no one will ever have the true answer, but,
right.
But, that is something that everyone will eventually, have to ask themselves. Like, do you believe these two men who made these accusations?
I believe them. I mean, it's super easy for this to be all a fabrication for publicity and to bring down the legacy of Michael Jackson and kind of dredge up old demons with the old accusations and the trial and everything. But I don't know, man. Like, to believe that I just sat there and watched 4 hours of a work of fiction, especially with some of the details they get into. I mean, again, paper lies still, you can write anything on it, but it's hard for me to look at them on camera and think that they're not telling the truth. So I do believe them. And I do think that Michael Jackson was a child molester. Do I believe he molested every single child he was ever in contact with, like Wade and James? No. That's why I feel like Macaulay Culkin and Corey Feldman can come out and be like, he never touched me. And then there's I read a story last night after I finished, and I was reading another article. It was like, I spent all this time with Michael Jackson, and I attended his funeral, and I went to the private memorial and everything. He never touched me at all. Like, I feel like there was kids that never had that experience, but I feel like there was several, including Wade and James, that had that experience, unfortunately.
Oh, man. So, I'm not going to lie, man. I don't think I believe Wade. I just think that there's a lot that I think there's so many things with him that is so questionable that for someone who's lied many times, like, what can I really believe? Like, so he lied on trial, to save Mike, and multiple, attorneys on video have said that he was so convincing that, it's really strange that he would sort of just change the story now. And also, whenever Mike died, like, he tried to sue the Michael Jackson estate for this massive amount of money. Apparently, it was like $1.5 billion.
Yeah.
And, it got thrown out because, I mean, he went on record during the trial and said that he didn't do it. So, why would a judge like really accept that sort of, lawsuit or whatever? Now, I'm a person that I do believe people, I tend to believe people when they make the accusation because I don't think, I don't think people really throw around false accusations willy nilly. Like, I mean, there's a statistic that like only, I think 9% of people who are accused of rape are wrongfully accused, right? So, if you've been accused of rape, there's like a 90% chance you actually did that shit. And that's why I honestly, I'm like 51-49% with Wade because I think that like, I don't think he would just make this up. But at the same time, like, with him trying to get that lawsuit that initially happened, and there was one point where he was, like I said, like he was trying to, do the, Michael Jackson tributes and trying to gain money off the Michael Jackson name. Initially, apparently there was like some report that like he actually tried to shop a book of the molestation, but publishers
it didn't get picked up.
Yeah, and so it's like this is a guy who's coming off as if he's trying to profit off of this man's death. And while he was alive, he didn't do any of this stuff. But whenever he died, that's when he's selling his Michael Jackson's, possessions for auction, and he's trying to get book deals, and he's trying to sue the estate. Now, according to the filmmaker, like him and Jimmy didn't make any money off of they didn't get paid for the documentary. But at the same time, I mean, we don't know what other book deals this could actually land them. We don't know what sort of appearance fees or anything like that. So I just think that for someone with like Wade, like I said, I'm 51-49%. Like I'm 51% he's lying about it. But a big part of me is I do believe survivors, but I just have a trouble with believing con men. And so he just comes off as a con man.
I will say for you go on, I really felt like there was more Wade in the documentary than there was Safe Chuck. Was that just me?
No, it's not like that. And that's another reason why I have a hard time believing Wade, because if you look at it again, I'm not gonna lie, Wade kind of comes off as a sociopath. Like this is a guy who doesn't even have remorse when he talks about his dad killing himself.
Right.
Like he had no remorse over that. And the way he talked, he didn't really even sound like he had much remorse for the sexual acts that he claims are going on. And if you can make the argument that this is a guy who just doesn't really know how to understand processing emotions. Like, I mean, that's something that I think is a very, very easy thing to even argue. But at the same time, I mean, it's like, even, his brother, he's just a regular ass dude, like, and his sister talking about it, I mean, that was their father. Like, you don't have any remorse, like you don't have like anything.
He was real stoic.
He was like, and so like I said, like and also I think that his story is told more because, and I mean, in a sense, their story is more tragic, and that's another part of filmmaking that I have a problem with, because I mean, his story is tragic because his dad, committed suicide, but I mean, it feels like maybe you're trying to capitalize off of that, because I mean, if he killed himself because of that, like he didn't kill himself because he knew about Michael Jackson lessons. He killed himself because his wife and his kid left for America.
Michael Jackson broke up his family.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that happened. But again, like she still made the choice to do it. And so
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say that Michael literally said she's coming with me, but she made the choice.
And so, yeah, man, I think there's too many great things with Wade that I would say that I believe his story. Like it's weird. I have a hard time actually saying that I don't believe it, but at the same time, like I said, I'm 51-49. Like there's just a part of me that it just feels very common from him. But for Jimmy, I think that there were some things with Jimmy that I think were questionable. Like I said, I think like his mother definitely wanted to profit off of Michael's stardom. And she, like I said, she herself didn't show any sort of remorse about, his situation. I think it is a bit strange that, do you remember the scene where Jimmy had well, I should explain to the listeners also. So there's a scene where Jimmy brings out a box of rings.
Right.
And Michael says him and Michael go to like this jewelry store to buy these rings. And while in the store, Michael is saying that I'm buying this for my girlfriend. I want this kid to try it on because if it'll fit him, it'll fit her. But Michael is supposedly he's buying the rings for Jimmy. And so when Jimmy takes out the box, he says, "I hate looking at these." And most people who have triggers, they don't typically keep those triggers around.
Right.
So I thought that was incredibly strange, and honestly, like, and now for people who are, rapists and, people who perpetuate those type of actual evil acts, they typically do keep tokens. And so they view those as actual trophies of what they, quote unquote, accomplished or whatever, or what they got away with. But for a victim to keep it, that was really surprising that he actually still kept that. And that was a bit strange to me.
Yeah, that I felt the same way too. Like I felt the emotion of that point in the movie where it was like Michael Jackson supposedly had this marriage with this little boy. I felt that emotion, but at the same time I was like, he really got all that jewelry still after all these years, especially knowing what he knows now. Now, granted, supposedly he didn't realize he was abused until later than Robson. So maybe he just hadn't got around to it. But at the same time, I would think if something suddenly clicked that I was abused by someone and I had something from that person still, my first instinct would be to get rid of it. I don't feel like let me keep this as a reminder of my trauma, So I'm with you there.
Yeah, and I guess maybe I'm picking nits at this point, but there was like another thing that was kind of strange to me. Like in the beginning, whenever we are introduced to Jimmy, he I think I'm picking nits with this sort of point or whatever. But in the beginning of the movie or the beginning of the documentary, we're introduced to Jimmy, and he tries to downplay what Michael means to him. Like, so basically, he's like, I wasn't a fan of Michael. I was more into Transformers. But, this is a kid who he says that he wasn't a fan of his, but then we see like home video of him, like maybe like, not even very far along into supposedly knowing Michael, that he knows like all his dance moves. And he's like,
right.
That was
because he was the first one that was on tour with him, right? Because I feel like that the first footage they started showing, like the old archival footage, was him being on tour with Michael after he did the Pepsi commercial.
Yeah,
and Michael would pull him on stage every night.
Yeah, and so there was they showed the Pepsi commercial, and they were like, we want to have Jimmy meet Michael for the first time, and so we want that reaction on camera. And like, whenever he sees Michael for the first time, it's like, this is a kid who's like, basically starstruck. And so, I mean, if you're not a fan of Michael, like, why would you be starstruck by this person that you aren't that big of a fan of? So I thought it was kind of strange that like he downplayed his like fandom or whatever. But and like I said, there was just, and maybe there was just pressure from his mother. Like maybe this was all things that like his mother, subconsciously planted that like, yeah, I know who Michael Jackson is, so I'm gonna get you next to him so we can, get this shit popping or whatever.
Yeah.
And so
I wouldn't
maybe
put it
that,
past her.
yeah, and so maybe that was it. Um, for Jimmy, I guess I don't believe Wade, but I think for Jimmy, I'm at like I'm more of like a 65-75% that I do believe Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought I'd ever say this, but I do think, Michael Jackson molested kids. And yeah, like Macaulay Culkin and Corey Feldman can come to his defenses, but I do think there is a reason that, he would have settled out of court for the 93 trial. And I do think that, yeah, there may have been people that tried to finesse him for money. But, we have a lot of adults who are very comfortable with leaving their kid around Michael in beds and sleepovers and whatnot. And,
Still blows my mind.
Yeah, like that shit just isn't right. Like when we're kids, we're taught not to talk to strangers, but they're letting their son sleep with a stranger.
Right.
And, this is really, it's sad that Michael molested kids, and it's sad that these parents are fucking complacent in it too. Like, now, these kids did absolutely nothing to deserve this at all. And like I said, I would never blame someone for being the victim of abuse. But their parents really coddled the shit and let the shit happen.
Yes.
And I think that there's something very dark. And whenever Jimmy's mom was on the screen, like I fucking hated her. Like I really did. Like, and I guess it is easier to hate her than to hate Michael because Michael's just dead, but
no, because she sounds so stupid though. Because she's like,
yeah,
well, all of a sudden, like Michael and Jimmy would be further and further away from us, and then Germany, like we were barely in the same building. They're like, oh, we can only keep you so close to Michael, and she's like, oh, that makes sense. He's Michael Jackson, and I was like, and then it was I believe it was her, the one that was at the apartment bill or the whatever you want to call it, the condo in LA, where she was like in the room next door when shit was happening. I think it might have been Joy, might have been Wade's mom that was saying that, oh, she was right next door, but then me and Michael were in bed next door. I think I was Joy. But still, like the idea that if it did happen and then you were right next door to your kid and you had no idea, like it's just insane.
Yeah. And I mean, we should also talk a little bit more about the house thing. So basically Jimmy's mother got a quote unquote loan from Michael to buy a house in California. And then after the 2005 trial, whenever like he got off, he basically said you don't have to pay back the loan. Mm-hmm. So I mean that's definitely some like, wink wink, nudge type of shit. So
yep.
Like I said, like I think that if any of my doubt, I mean if I have any doubt about Jimmy's story, it really is only because of his mother. And I do think that she manipulated the situation. I do think she put her son in these positions to whereas he would get molested, but she kept turning a blind eye to it. But yeah, like I said, I think that with Wade, I think his mom was complacent, but I also think that there's things with him personally that I just don't believe him as like someone as credible. But at the same time, like, I think while there is things with Jimmy that I do think are flawed, I I'm more prone to believe his story than Wade's.
So, not to interrupt, but I am just kind of Googling things, and literally on a site called reflectionsonthedance.com, Ray Robson, wrote a tribute to Michael after he passed, and it's I'd say about maybe 1,000 words of everything, kind of like what we heard in the movie, and then all these other details and stuff. And I still have my mobile phone with his number on it. I just can't bear the thought of deleting his messages. This is in 2009, and then the very last thing he closes with, "I love you, Michael." Wade Robson.
So yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like, this is a guy who was star chasing. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, his mom did it and he's doing it, and so. Well, and actually, I should also mention that even for the lawsuit, Jimmy was a part of the lawsuit as well. So that doesn't really look good for Jimmy, but at the same time, like, you know, Wade Robson, he continually tried to profit off of Michael. And like, so that's why I just can't believe him. I just can't. But at the same time, like, you know, of these other people who have accused Michael, I mean, it's a shit with Cosby. Like, if you take the statistic that like 90% of women who make accusations of rape were really raped, of the 30 women that accused accused Cosby, only 10% of them. So like 3 women are lying. Okay. But the rest of the 27, like, it happened to them. And so, you know, I think in this situation, Wade just probably falls in the 10%, and Jimmy falls in the 90. So
right.
So
yeah.
But again, like, I want to preference to listeners that, like, at the same time, like, while I'm saying I personally don't believe Wade's story, that's definitely not to say that, like, I negatively judge people who do, because Twitter is a place where nuance goes to die. And so the reaction on Twitter was like, either you're super with it or super against it. And so people are up in arms about getting at people who disagree with the accusations and people who agree with the accusations. And, you know, I'm a person that, like, I can say that I don't believe Wade, but at the same time, like, I'm definitely not going to say that Michael Jackson's innocent. Like, I'm definitely not going to champion, like, his side of the story, because, I mean, you know, you have no business with not even sexually, you have no business sleeping with children unless
not at all.
Like, unless you're the child's parent and they are having a nightmare and they want to sleep in the bed with you to get through the night. Like, you don't have any business sleeping with children. And so, you know, all these kids over all these years, like, something had to have happened with at least one of these kids. And if it's some situation where out of these dozens of kids, only one kid got molested, then that's one too many anyway. So, you know, we're not gonna give one a pass. Like, we're not gonna give. There's no slip ups with molesting kids. Like, there just isn't.
Another thing that bugged me, now that I think about it, about the documentary, was how Wade had said he had been replaced by Macaulay Culkin. Like, how convenient, as a YouTuber I watch would say, that he was supposed to be in black and white, and all of a sudden the calls stop coming, and then they're having to drive themselves to the video shoot, and then they get there, and then, oh, look, it's the kid from Home Alone, just happens to be there, and completely took Wade's spot in the video.
Yeah.
I don't know, just listening to you and then kind of digging a little bit more on Wade. Like, I'm not saying I'm completely flipping on my opinion that I feel like he was abused, but there's way more smoke on his side than, like you said, than on James's side for me. Like, especially now, like coming in before we turn on these microphones, I was completely all in. And now listening to you point out the facts and then kind of doing a little digging on some stuff on the internet that wasn't just pure MJ innocent. It's you see, it's just a little bit more suspect on his side. So I don't know if my opinion will eventually change, but definitely more flakiness from him.
I mean, that's the thing why I said like the two separate questions are the important questions to ask. Do you believe them? And also, do you believe what Michael is or isn't? I mean, and, you know, each survivor is their own survivor. So the individual, you know, you can question the individual, but the collective, that's ultimately what's more important. And so ultimately, we both agree that we believe Jimmy, and we both agree that that Michael Jackson molested children. And so sort of segueing, I talked a little bit earlier about the cancel culture and how, you know, there are radio stations that are not going to play Michael. Well, at the moment, they said they're not going to play Michael. I think that I think Michael Jackson means so much to just music and, you know, the pop world. Thinking about the idea of canceling Michael is like talking about basketball, but we're going to cancel Michael Jordan.
Right.
Or we're going to talk about football and we're going to cancel fucking Tom Brady. Like, we're going to cancel, you know, we're going to talk about baseball, but we're never going to talk about fucking Babe Ruth. Like, he's literally the greatest, like, of, you know, of what this pop shit is.
Baseball does have a cancel culture, though, because there's, like, you think about Clemens and Bonds, like, they've been actively trying to cancel them from history by not putting them in the Hall. So I kind of feel like they do have a little bit going on. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that in there.
That was a bad segue.
No, it wasn't.
It was terrible. But
it's my show. No, I'll cut it out. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Well, I mean, we need a laugh, so fuck it, keep it in. So when we come to the summer and the cookouts come and we come to Halloween,
oh God,
do you think that America? Well, we can't talk about the world because I mean we're just American citizens, and so, you know, the world is a different beast, but do you think in America, at least, that Michael Jackson will be canceled?
There's no way in hell. I was thinking about this answer specifically earlier, too, because, I mean, no matter what side of the argument you fall on, man, Michael Jackson's musical legacy is cemented. Like, he is a part of... He's a huge part of every single day music. Like, there is not, I mean, even if you take his music off the radio, which would never happen. Like, yeah, there's some stations in Canada that's already taken it off, and kudos to them for taking that step to be like, we're not going to support him anymore. But on one hand, it's just too... It's difficult to do, but then also no one will really want to do it. Because can you imagine life without walking into CVS to go pick up some cough drops or something and then hearing Human Nature come across the speakers in the store? Can you imagine just randomly having on your Spotify and just letting it play, and then all of a sudden here goes Dangerous coming from Spotify? Like, it's just too, he's just too common. Like, it's almost like he is as common as breathing when it comes to music. Like, very few artists, like he's surpassed everything music wise, and you'll have your Elvis supported like, well, the King was awesome. Like, yeah, but King of Pop is way more important than Elvis in the grand scheme of things at this point. And you can, and there will be some out there who will say Beyonce has possibly eclipsed him in popularity and everything, but at the same time, there's a lot of good Beyonce songs, but not all of those songs are going to be playing every few seconds, every single day, no matter what you do. So there may be some. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I think even in the argument of Beyonce versus Michael, that like, I don't think she's past him because she doesn't have like, she has Lemonade and she has her stellar performances on tour and on like award shows and stuff. But she doesn't have, can you name like a Beyonce song that has like what Thriller has? Like even something like Single Ladies, like that doesn't have the impact of what the song Thriller had. Just look at the song of Thriller. How many artists really get a chance to have a song like that? Like Prince had Purple Rain. I mean, Eminem has like Lose Yourself, but I mean that's not like really his Thriller or whatever.
Apples and Oranges, yeah.
Yeah, but just in a pop sphere, like I mean, she just doesn't have the catalog that Michael has. Like, I mean, she doesn't have like she just doesn't have that thing that Michael had. And I mean, in all honesty, the article that I read that Jenkins wrote earlier, he argued that no artist should have what Michael had. Like, no artist should have that sort of command over. No one person should really have that command over, you know, just pop culture. Like,
yeah.
I mean, you know, he wrote about how in the Super Bowl he stood for just 4 minutes and did nothing, and it was the greatest thing that people had ever seen before. Like when he performed like the '92 Super Bowl in California, and so
it was 92, yeah. And here's a hot ass take: I didn't think that Super Bowl performance was that great. Everybody,
it wasn't good at all.
Thank you. A lot of people were like, "Oh, that's the greatest Super Bowl halftime ever." I'm like, no, it really wasn't.
Dog, he stood, he moved, and he went wild. Like that's, dog. Can you imagine standing still, people cheering? Let's say you want a Subway. You're standing still, people cheering and shit. You like sneezing, like niggas start fainting. Can you? No one should have that control over the pop landscape anymore.
I know.
Like, it's ridiculous. Like,
and I even have a Live in Bucharest DVD of him performing like in the late 80s, like on the Bad Tour and stuff. And while it's cool and there are times he's actually singing and the dancing is phenomenal, at the same time, I was kind of like, man, it's like I watched this like as a grown adult. So it's like, I could see why people would think it was like the best thing since sliced bread back then. But like you pay thousands of dollars to sit maybe a football field away from this guy, and this is the show that he gave you. Like, I'm not trying to take anything away from his performing or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like, I kind of feel like his later concerts, and especially at Super Bowl, is not all it's all cracked up to be.
Yeah, I mean, because he was basically performing in like 60,000 seat fucking football stadiums like across the world. Mm-hmm. He's in countries where motherfuckers may not even know English like that. Like, you know, I mean, he just had it all. Like, he really had it all. And I mean, he proved that he shouldn't have had it all.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to be canceled. Like, I mean, it's the funny thing is, I was thinking about Spike Lee and how after Michael's death, you know, they have Michael Jackson's Day in Brooklyn. Is Spike Lee going to have that? Like, the cookouts, like the family reunions, like, are niggas not going to play like PYT? Like,
Yeah, they are.
I mean, thrill. There's no way people aren't going to play Thriller in some way, shape, or form.
The black community is going to ignore Leaving Neverland so hard, I think.
No, I mean, I think maybe the older generations, maybe, but yeah, I think this is a younger situation because the funny thing is, like, they don't. They're blessed not to have been in the cult of Michael Jackson. Like that's literally all it is. Like, if you don't remember, if you didn't have consciousness to even see fucking the black and white video when he turned into a panther at the end, he was smashing a car. Like, if you weren't a part of that era, then you have an advantage. Like, you're not really soiled by what his image was. Like, if you don't if you don't even remember the Moonwalker Sega game, like, if you weren't a part of that culture, then you're way more susceptible to believe in, like, an accusation about him. But for us, like, I'm 32. Like, if someone, so Bad was 88, Dangerous was 91.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were born, let's say you're actually, you know what, the benchmark is probably the 93 trial, because by 93, after that shit happened, like, that's when people started to wane on him a little bit. So if you were born from 93 to now, you don't have the cult of Michael fandom on you. You just don't.
No.
And so if you're born in 93 and younger and you don't believe the accusations, like, any of them, I gotta think something wrong with you. like that's just kind of wild. But the thing is, like, for us, like, if you were born of or a part of the 80s and a part of the 70s, like, you know the importance of what Off the Wall was. Like, you know the arguments between Off the Wall versus Thriller. You picked a side. Like, elementary school, there's always that one kid who dances like Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
I still remember the first time I ever saw that in my school. Like, I was going to Orr Elementary School in Southeast DC, and, like, we're all leaving home, and then there's one kid, he just started busting it out, and, like, the whole school, like, the thousand little ass black kids, like, not thousands, like, hundreds of little ass black kids, all circled around this one little kid because he could do the Michael Jackson.
Yep.
Like, every hood in America had, like, not even just every hood, like, every city knew someone who could do the Michael Jackson. And that's the thing, like, that no one does the Beyonce, like no one does the Pharrell, like, no one does the Ray Shremmerd, like people doing the Michael Jackson. And so that's just the thing that we all grew up on. And, the older generation, like, it is going to be hard for them to believe it, but, at the same time, like, I mean, it is something that I can't ignore. I think collectively, like, whenever, Aaliyah is getting to our age, like, I don't think there's going to be any problem for her or her kids. Like, I think by that generation, like, they'll be well beyond the, needing for reasoning. Like, they'll just, they'll just, like, he was a molester and keep it moving or whatever. But, I mean, shit, for us, I mean, I still have Michael on my phone. Like, I still haven't deleted shit from my phone yet. I haven't listened to it yet, and I know that the first time I listen to it, like, I'm going to get sick.
No, I completely agree that it's not going to be the same. And even though we're both on that, well, even though you don't believe Wade and I'm in the part of believing Wade, but I'm kind of skeptical now. Like, when he was describing the acts, man, like, it ruined me. That was the part that really ruined me. Like when he was like, I'm not going to repeat it here, but when he was describing the sexual acts, man, like it was, I literally just felt super sick to my stomach listening to that. And I'm sure that's possibly what the filmmaker was going for as he was doing this. And if it is all true, then from Wade's side, then it's super disgusting. But even if Wade is lying, he's a convincing enough liar to make that moment just cringy. And it just makes you, like, you think about all the times you listen to Human Nature and Who Is It, or In the Closet, or Take It Back to the Way You Make Me Feel, or even all the way back to Rock With You. And then I think this dude had little boys on all fours on his bed while he looked at their, it's just, there's no coming back from that regardless.
Yeah, man. And also we definitely need to take a time to acknowledge that we're living in a dangerous time of when people say that, like, we're living in a dangerous time to where people don't believe accusations if there's not quote unquote proof. And so we are living in a time where we're living in a cell phone era where everyone has video capability and photo capability. And we are living in a time where, if we don't see it, we don't believe it to be true.
Right.
Which is very dangerous. And I want to make our listeners very clear that, again, I'm not, like I said, I'm saying I don't necessarily believe Wade, but at the same time, like, for accusations like this, we as a society and probably as a planet, we really need to not take the stance of, if we don't see it, we don't believe it, because, by this and, like, any cop that harasses a person of color, if we don't have the camera footage, we don't believe the person that got killed. So we need to make very clear that, like, we do need to listen to every accusation with a serious and open ear and open mind, and then judge for ourselves. But, we really need to get away from the fact that if I don't see it on video, we're not going to believe it to be true. So a lot of the Twitter thing is there's no proof of it actually happening. Well, he's not going to videotape him doing these terrible things because, there wasn't really videotaping prevalent back then in that sort of way. Mm-hmm. And, unless we, do the blacklight all over fucking Neverland, we're not going to see, like, the evidence of actual sexual acts. Like, that shit happened so long ago, we're not going to see it. But at the same time, like, that's why I said, like, I do believe Jimmy's story, and I am more prone to believing a survivor's story. But again, like, I don't need to see video proof that Cosby was a serial rapist.
No.
Like, we can listen to people, we can make judgments for ourselves, and we can make intelligent judgments, and, we can go from there. But like I said, I wanted to make it clear that, like, we have to get off this thing of needing videotape for proof.
No, I'm 100% with you, because that's a slippery slope whenever you're facing that you have to see the evidence and everything like that, because it's hard enough for people to come out, especially someone who's been abused, to finally face the truth and admit to themselves that something happened. And it's hard enough for them to explain it to friends or loved ones or even someone they're getting into a relationship with. It's like, hey, full disclosure, like it's super hard for them to go there. And for it to be a public matter when you have to step up and say, this happened here, and even if it's just as simple, well, not as simple, but even if it's as small as just going to file a police report, like it and then it's like, oh, well, there was no videotape. It's like you're you're taking away the power that they had already worked themselves up to get by immediately discrediting him because you say there's no proof. It's something that we shouldn't do, and I'm hoping that as the years go by, that people start looking more for facts versus proof necessarily before they pass judgment.
Yeah, man. And so, yeah, I think that, like I said, I definitely wanted to get that in the air because I'm definitely not one of these Twitter people that say, "Oh, I gotta see Michael looking at this kid's butt before I actually believe." No, I don't need that shit. Like,
no,
if a woman tells me some dude grabbed her ass in the club multiple times and no one did anything about it, like, I don't need to see security night vision of that. Like, I will believe her when she says that. So yeah, man. Like I said, like we, as a societal problem, we really need to sort of check that. And with the cancel culture, like I said, I think Michael, at the moment at least, like he very sort of, I think he's probably the first person immune to actual cancel culture. Well, him and Trump. Like,
yeah,
him and Michael Jackson, Donald Trump, and I never thought I'd compare them in the same sentence in my life, but Michael Jackson and Donald Trump are above the cancel culture. Like, maybe we'll cancel Trump after his reelection, but you notice that's their reelection.
Yeah,
but maybe we'll cancel him then, and maybe that's how long it'll take to even cancel Michael. Maybe this, documentary will actually have other accusers coming forward with their stories of survival. But
I hope it does. Like, not necessarily more people accusing Michael Jackson, but I hope that people will see this, and even if it's in their own lives that they've been abused and they just never have confronted it head on. I hope it does give them the strength to step up and kind of do what they have to do to admit to get the truth out there about what happened to them. I hope it does empower somebody.
And this is something like the how do you say his name, Jesse Smollett, like the guy from Empire, like
right.
Like, he could have fabricated that he was attacked for being a gay black man, but if you tell me that a gay black man was attacked for being gay and or black, like, I'm going to believe his story because, Smollett, he is the exception. Like, he's not the rule. Like, whenever these unprotected people say that they have been victims of these heinous things, like, we really need to listen to them and we really need to trust them. So, like, if there's another gay black actor tomorrow that gets, God forbid, he gets attacked, I'm not gonna dismiss his story just because Smollett may have fabricated this thing.
Absolutely not.
And so for Wade, like I said, like, he may have fabricated this thing for money, but I'm not gonna dismissing the other survivor for what what they've gone through. And let's say, for example, Colin McCulkin, like, let's say he comes forward with an accusation against Michael, and it's the same sort of thing where it's like, I was in a position where I was scared and I didn't think I could tell anyone, or maybe he didn't think it really was abuse because he really thought he was in love with Michael Jackson. They were in love together, and he actually felt comfortable with actually admitting that to the world. I mean, I think that would be a great thing because holding on to that type of trauma, that's not going to benefit anybody, especially him. Like, and I think that's why Jimmy ended up cracking, because I do think Michael's death triggered, whatever innately in him to actually, it triggered his depression, and he, with his wife, he came forward with, what he'd gone through. So yeah, like, these stories of survival, they do give strength to other people to come forward and to face their truth, and hopefully to get better. And so if any other person was molested by Michael, hopefully they can get some sort of solace, and hopefully they can work out these things to where they know that it wasn't their fault that they were molested, and that, they're not alone, and they can get help for, whatever psychological or emotional issues that they have to deal with as a result of it.
I couldn't have said it better myself, man. So, part of something that's just been running through my mind constantly since I watched this documentary is how many people knew and just never did anything about it.
I mean,
and I'm talking like famous down to a waiter to I don't know, somebody came and cleaned at Neverland.
Not Butler, but the maid for Michael actually came out and made accusations, but her shit was, dismissed. So, if she was telling the truth, I mean, she made the jump, but no one believes her. But, we are living in a society where we are in the Me Too era, and we are, at least hopefully, we are actually trying to make strides of actually listening to victims. So if she came out again, maybe we actually hear her again, because apparently she said that she actually saw, if I read one accusation correctly, it said that she saw like Michael naked with a boy or in bed with a boy. So, and actually, I think it was Macaulay. I think she said specifically she saw Macaulay with Michael or something along those lines. So yeah, I mean, I think in the sort of, I mean, shit, I think if he was molesting kids like that, like, I honestly, other than the parents who were complacent, like managers and like other people, like
Quincy.
I think more of those people will actually go to, during that era, it didn't feel like he actually apparently was molesting kids. And so if I had to estimate, I mean, 93 definitely probably wasn't the first time he actually did it, but if I had to estimate, it's really sad to think about, but he probably wasn't doing that shit until the fucking bad era, which is very sad to think about, because, I mean, in Moonwalker, he had those kids recreate the fucking bad scene, and then he had like the three kids with him during like, the entire movie. So that's probably when he actually started the whole, like, his whole shit or whatever. But I think during that R&B era where, like, he was making like off the wall and Thriller and shit, like, hopefully he wasn't doing anything then, but I mean, fuck, I mean, you never know, honestly.
Right. I kind of agree with your timeline of it being starting around the bad era. And the documentary kind of leads us to believe that too, because they mentioned, I believe it was Wade and his sister had mentioned they were riding in a car with Michael and he was playing them unreleased music. But that could have been music from Dangerous too. So, but with Jimmy, I believe the whole Pepsi commercial thing happened in '87, and that's when their whole friendship, relationship, wrong ship started.
Yeah.
So it may have, and the thing is, one thing that is not mentioned in the documentary, at least that I caught, was there was never a time where they said anything along the lines of, we were with Michael in the studio. It was always we were with Michael at his house. So if he was working with Quincy or with another artist or producer or anything like that, then there's a high probability that they didn't see what was going on. It's not like they would record a track and then go back to Neverland and hang out. That's not what Michael had Neverland for. Neverland was for him. It wasn't a spot to go hang out. And he couldn't really go hang out anyway. So all his interactions with other people would have been in the studio, I think, away from the kids.
Yeah, because that whole like Michael like embracing the kids thing, like I mean that definitely wasn't a thing during the Off the Wall or Thriller era. Like that just wasn't like a thing to the best of my knowledge. And so I mean, who the fuck knows like what even would have triggered it? Like I don't even want I can't I mean I've never molested a child, so I wouldn't even think I can't even think of the first place that it would trigger anything like that. So I mean I can't think of, what his mindset was. I mean it wasn't smart and it wasn't safe and wasn't clear. But yeah, man, I mean it's every damn man,
it's crazy, man. It's just mind-boggling to try to even begin to wrap your head around it. Because believe me, I've been trying for the past couple of days now.
Yeah, man. So I mean, I think also people want to chalk it up to we're talking about parents who were complacent. Like we talk about how Joe Jackson was a terrible father, which he was, but at the same time, like I mean. Even if he was sexually abusive to Michael, like that still doesn't give Michael a pass or anybody a pass to do these sort of heinous things. And so,
absolutely not.
So yeah, man.
So to recap real quick about the main point, I believe Wade and Jimmy. Marcus believes Jimmy and not Wade. Wade he's almost 50-50 on. But we both believe that Michael did molest children. And it's something that was always in the back of my head. But like I said, I just kind of, especially after his death, I just kind of shoved it down. So it was like, oh, well, I mean, he got acquitted in 2005. Now he's gone. Boo-hoo. Woe is me. I made it all by myself. Like it even mattered. But yeah, we were both fans to begin with. It's not like we were casual fans or we were more Prince guys. We both appreciate Prince's work, but it's safe to say, Marcus, you're a bigger Michael Jackson fan than a Prince fan, right?
Yeah, I was always more of a Mike guy.
Yeah, I was too. So I feel like we're talking to a studio audience. But because this episode's been so serious. But I mean, it definitely it was difficult to watch for me because for years it's always been Michael Jackson. That's Michael Jackson, the king of pop, the biggest artist of our lifetime. Like this dude was larger than life, and then for him to be capable of being a genius in the studio and do good things for people and yes, even do great things for children in his lifetime that we've been made aware of from his charity efforts and things like that. From him being able to do those things in the public eye, and then it come out that he's able to also do this horrific things in the private eye in his own personal life is just insane. And for me, there's no separating the man and the music. So I'm not going to listen to a Michael Jackson song the same again. I'm not going to actively seek it out. It'll just kind of be a chapter that's closed, that on something that was always a big part of my life. And it's still mind-boggling is the only words that keep coming to me. It's still a lot to take in even at this point because the documentary is only a few days old at this point for us.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to be actively listening to it anymore. I'll probably be around people. Well, I'll probably be around, people that may play it, but I'm not going to be enjoying it anymore.
Right. It's not on the level of Kanye for me. I mean, No, I meant opposite. It's not. It's way worse than Kanye for me, is what I'm trying to say. Where I was like, I don't want to enjoy Kanye's music because he's an idiot. Like, I don't want to enjoy Michael Jackson's music because he hurt
He's a
children.
molester.
Yeah, he's
And
a child
actually,
molester.
I haven't. I deleted all my Kanye off my phone, and I haven't. I have yet to actually listen to a Kanye song. Like, I've been around when Kanye's been playing, and I remember listening to music, but I still not actively sought out Kanye, and so this is way worse than that. So I know, like, I won't be actively listening to Michael anymore.
Yeah. So, Marcus, I just want to say that you've been outstanding this episode. I feel like there was times where I was kind of like all over the place, and you kept the ship kind of righted. And again, your questions and topics are always bring out the best in both of us, I think. But I just want to let you know right now, while we're still recording, that I think you definitely knocked it out of the park and about this tough topic. So I appreciate you, man.
I mean, if I knocked it out of the park with the Bash Brothers, man, you did that shit too, cuz. So
well, I appreciate it. It'll sound a lot better with me fixing a couple edits here and there. But yeah, it was easily the roughest episode of Hyphenation that I've ever recorded and that we've ever recorded together. And when we were talking about this, I likened it to episode 17, where I was talking about Alton Sterling and Philando Castile. And I actually went back and listened to that episode after I told you that. And this is in no way compares to what we talked about tonight. Because as awful and as horrible and as wrong as their deaths were, like, the idea of what Michael did to, in my opinion, Wade and Jimmy, but to children in general with his abuse is just way worse, man.
Yeah. Definitely. And so, yeah, I definitely want to thank you for, giving the space and, wanting to talk about it and being honest, man. I mean, these are, these are topics that everyone needs to be thinking about, needs to be talking about, and having, smart conversations. And even like you said, like, I present a different side that you may not have thought of, and, you're starting to think about it a bit more. I mean, yeah, like, I listening to you, like I said, like, I do think that, like I said before, like, even though I am 49%, like, I definitely, like I said, I understand your perspective, and I think it is a very honest and very real reaction to feel. And so I would never, take that for granted. And also, I do think that you, like I said, you do approach this with a very open mind and, like, a very clear mind. And so yeah, man, bottom line, like, we not with the fuck shit. Like, we're definitely not with the, championing people who do wrong. And so yeah, man, like, being that honest about someone who we idolize. And I mean, and like I said, like, you saw, like, you were in the midst of the 80s, so you saw, like, this shit before I did. And so
Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, like, his death greatly affected you. I mean, that's some real shit to admit. Like, this person who had, like, this larger than life thing in your life, like this larger than life role in your life, and they were a total letdown in the end. Like, that's something very hard to admit to. And that's, what I've been wrestling with, like, these last couple of days. And I do think a lot of people are like us, where they're, even just saying it out loud, maybe, if they say it out loud, it has to be true. And so maybe they're having a hard time dealing with that as well. And so yeah, I mean, hopefully our conversation leads to them thinking more about things and, really considering, not only this, but other survivors and other people's point of views of what they're saying is their truth, and, just thinking about it reasonably and make your own opinion about things.
Yeah. I can only hope. So I'm going to, by the time you hear this, you'll notice I'm not going to put any commercials or ads for other shows from Hyphen Podcast Group or anything in here. I feel like this is a serious discussion, and for an Alapal drop or catch a show or a black man to come out of nowhere when we're in the middle of such a serious discussion just wouldn't be fair to the topic. So presented to you without interruption. This has been Hyphen Nation. I am Kellen Conley. Marcus, any words of wisdom you want to say before we get out of here?
Words of wisdom, like I said, man, the 90 to 10%, whenever a survivor tells you they have a story to tell, listen to them, be open, do not judge, and yeah, man. And also tell people to stop doing this fuck shit in the world, and maybe we won't have these stories coming out as much. But no, on a serious tip, like I said, if a survivor tells you their story, do not judge, listen, learn, and become a better person for it.
Yeah. And then my advice, my words of wisdom this episode is, I know it's 2019, and I understand that it is more difficult than ever once they hit a certain age to know what your kid is doing or what they're going through. But parents, please, 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 please be active and know what's happening in your children's lives. They're going to hate you for it. They're going to resent you for it. But you don't want to find out X amount of years from now that, I don't know, the neighbor down the street who y'all used to hang out with all the damn time used to touch your daughter or your son inappropriately at the dinner table, like I said, like years after it happened, because you weren't aware, or you trusted them a little too much, or I don't know, like just try to stay on top of it. I know it's super hard in today's age, and I know it's even harder once a kid gets to be a teenager and they don't want to talk to you, or they're out running around with their friends and they think that they're grown and all this. But just try to know what they're doing and try to be as open and honest when it comes to conversation with them as possible. Make sure that you let them know that you love them, you care for them, that you are their friend, but you're also still the authority figure in their life. But at the same time that they can come to you with anything, no matter what. Just try to always keep that dialogue open and not get blindsided by something like this. Because, like I said, Joy Robson and Stephanie, went blank on his last name. The other mom, Jimmy's mom, that we both said that they had their disingenuous moments in the documentary, but for them to, and yes, they did come to the boys when the 93 happened and was like, did he touch you? And then they had been groomed by Michael to say no, of course. And then they even took it a step further where Michael and his lawyers, including the late Johnny Cochran, were even talking to these boys about how to answer these questions according to their what they said in the documentary. Like even with all of that, like they just came off as, we said, money hungry and fame hungry and starstruck by the idea of Michael Jackson. I don't care if Usher or Diddy or Justin Bieber decides in 2 weeks that your son or your daughter is the greatest thing in the world and they want to spend all this time with them. Don't believe the hype, man. Take Chuck D's words to heart and just think. And if you do that, then you're doing yourself and your children a favor.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So, appreciate everybody listening to this difficult topic. Love to hear your feedback, even if you disagree with everything and think that Michael has never done anything wrong. Mr. Jackson, I don't know what we'll call him now. I don't want to call him even. I don't even want to say his name at this point right now. But I'll figure out something clever whenever the time comes. But this episode wasn't for being funny or being clever, but appreciate everybody listened. We want to hear your feedback. If you have any, appreciate everybody who listens to the show. And thanks, y'all.
Peace.